Well, up there, the public service.
Selling it, yeah.
Okay, has any place looked at limiting the amount of water that can be taken from the ground for fracking? I know, places that don't have a lot of water. I know over near Virginia Beach one time, they tried to regulate some development because there was concern of the salt water encroaching into the freshwater aquifer because they were drawing so much fresh water out. Has any place looked at limiting the amount of fresh water that can be taken for?
New York's regs address that, if I'm not mistaken. New York's, you might know, New York put a moratorium on Marcellus drilling. I believe it ran for at least 2 years. And they recently issued some really comprehensive regs, and they're online. And I believe that one of the things they look at in permitting is the availability of the water supply and the impact on local water use. And as far as I know, there's nothing in the West Virginia regs that provides in which the DEP looks at impact on local water supply and the permitting process. And I'm pretty sure that's also the case in Pennsylvania. So New York's sort of ahead of the game in this. Yeah.
I just want to go back for a second to what you guys have been working on in Morgantown for the last several months, a year maybe, with that court case, because it seems like you were able to gain a level of voluntary protections as part of that agreement that not everybody gets.
Right.
And despite all these other issues, like having talked to hundreds of people in Pocahontas County over the last, 3 or 4 months, it's my strong sense that people don't feel protected. And it's my strong sense when I drive through Nicholas County and have helicopters flying over and drawing seismic lines, and the landscaping is changing in the town of Richwood every day, and clear cuts are going in, that's so fast upon us that I just wish that you could speak for a moment to the level of voluntary protections that you were able to gain. And also legally, if you enact a ban and then decide it's fine and see it happening in other places where it's fine, can't you just lift that ban?
Yeah, you can always lift the ban. The driller in Morgantown, one didn't have to negotiate. And it started, the negotiations on the water were done before the ban. Because the city, the negotiations on the water protection were done by what's called Morgantown Utilities Board, which is MUB. And so the driller was cooperating with MUB, and the driller, it's a responsible driller. It has a good reputation, and MUB has been following it pretty closely. But the driller assumed that the Morgantown Utilities Board was the same as the city, and it isn't. The city didn't even know about these wells until May. They started drilling in March. Excuse me, they started drilling in May, and the permits were issued in March. So this driller was just responsible enough to agree to these conditions to protect the water supply. And now, after the ban, it was willing to negotiate over some other conditions as well.
So what were the conditions that you guys gained or got?
They agreed to a particularly strong cement casing. The minimum, they went above the minimum, and they agreed to test the cement as it was being poured, which is a major safety device. So it would provide a good seal so that the water wouldn't leak out. And second, they agreed to what's called a closed loop system, so that rather than when this 20% of the fracking water comes out, it's called the backflow, a lot of gas drillers just put the water in some lined pits on site. Of course, MUB was worried about that leaking, so they agreed to, when the water comes back out, put it in great big tanks and then haul it off the property by truck and dispose of it off-site at licensed disposal So, and that was huge. So there wouldn't be any pits on site that would contain contaminated water. And then they agreed to line the entire well site, which is large, and so that with a non-permeable base, so that if there was a blowout, there wouldn't be seepage. And finally, they agreed to a berm all the way around the well site. So again, if there was a blowout, it would contain 5 times the amount of water being used at any one time. In other words, a fifth condition. They agreed to do the drilling and the fracking in segments. So rather than send all 5 million gallons down at once, they're going to send them down in 400,000 gallon segments. And so again, if there's a blowout, it would easily be contained. And none of that was required by state law.
How can zoning impact this?
It's an alternative device for regulating it. And for example, in Morgantown, the city might still have the option. I mean, there's an argument that Judge Tucker's decision says we can't touch gas drilling at all. But it's the city's position that if we have to allow fracking, we can at least zone it.
You can do what?
You can zone it and say you can't. It's like any other activity. State license is bars, but the city of Morgantown can say you can't put a bar in this neighborhood. It's never done that. Looked at all the bars in Morgantown. Yeah.
Going back to the driller reputable and all of his double, triple, quadruple engineering to abate possible environmental damage. The economics, the cost of extraction to the value of what he's getting. I mean, is he out and operating, or that's just an agreement? Because that sounds so expensive, I don't see how he can make any money. Which is a good thing.
Well, I think they anticipate making a lot of money.
But, yeah, so the cost of extraction for him is enormous. Compared.
Well,
to
these are all what I would consider to be best practices and are the kinds of things the state should be requiring of everything.
Yes, I agree.
And there's still enough money in those wells to allow them to make considerable profits. The wells in Morgantown are on the Morgantown Industrial Park, and that's really outside out of mind for most all of Morgantown. So I think at least there it won't have a big impact.
Well, I'll differ on that moment. Driving into County Commissioners Association training in Morgantown, Water Hotel, being a former WVU student myself, and one thing that the bar we're talking about, there's a change across the river as I drove in down into the bridge drive. And the change I noticed was something was different over there. And I looked over at the left, and it was in fact in the business as well.
They're up on the hill. And you can see the site at a couple points coming down there.
How large is that site? How many acres?
It's about 6 acres. Yes, sir.
Assuming that the majority of our county commission is in favor of banning drilling in the Marcellus Shale with the use of fracking, what would be your recommendation as the best legal strategy to achieve that?
Well, you enact it like any other ordinance, and then if you get sued, you defend it. And I think it's defensible in terms that you can create arguments that will could stand up in court. I couldn't guarantee you they would. Because you have preemption arguments, you have takings arguments, you have contract clause arguments. issues to which they do not lend clear outcomes.
Would that go to federal court or state court, or could you go both ways?
You could go to either.
But the plaintiff would be,
The plaintiff would be somebody who wants to drill here, somebody who's bought a lease here, or somebody who sold a lease here.
yeah, it could be anybody. So that,
And of course, the people in Morgantown went to the state court. There are some advantages to going to state court, there are some to going to federal court.
Isn't the value of potential gas on a particular property somewhat questionable? Because not every well produces, so how do they put a value on something that's unknown?
Your point's well taken. That you don't know what you're going to get out of the well until you actually drill. But I think the law would say if it's trying to measure damages in a particular case, you make the best effort. And it's a matter of proof. You might have, answering this gentleman's question over here, possibility that the county could seek declaratory relief of some kind.
Before that enacted the ordinance?
Yeah, I'd have to
What's that missing?
You can seek a declaratory judgment from the court about a legal question, and not seek traditional injunctive relief or damages. Whether you can do that before, I have some doubts about that. I think you can do that in construction. Yeah.
What are the rights of a surface owner who, let's say, owns 1 acre right in the middle of 1,000 acres that have been leased out, but he owns the mineral rights to that 1 acre?
He's out of luck. I mean, it's happened over in Wetzel County. A lot of the people over there haven't leased out their gas. They're just living next to someone who has. And they're bearing as much of the brunt as the person getting the royalties.
And can they draw gas from under his at 1 acre, or is there no accounting for it?
And I think they can. I mean, can in the sense that it's feasible for them to do it. And I'm not the guy to talk to about the legal implications of that. That's part of that's the thing about Marcellus Drilling. There are so many levels of issues. There are the environmental issues, which we don't really know about yet. And there are the long-term consequences, and then there are legal consequences. You know, it's like trying to figure, the industry wants pooling, where they pool the royalties somehow. I don't understand this whole